All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Samsung Galaxy F15 5G.
Okay.
This is a mid-range phone that's been getting a lot of buzz lately. We want to see if it lives up to the hype.
Yeah.
Our source material for this deep dive is going to be a detailed review that we found from RechargeMyTopup Tech Reviews app. They always have some great stuff there, so I'm excited to jump into it. First up, let's talk about the design. The review mentions that it's sleek and sturdy, and it has a massive 6.6-inch Super AMOLED display.
Wow.
I'm already picturing myself, binging all my favorite shows on this thing. But let's go a little deeper here. They also mentioned FHD plus resolution and a 90 hertz refresh rate. Can you break that down for me? What does that actually mean for the user experience?
So FHD plus resolution, you're going to get a visually stunning experience, especially on a screen that size. But the 90 hertz refresh rate, I think, is what really elevates things. So everything from scrolling through social media to playing, fast-paced games is going to feel incredibly smooth and responsive.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and some phones in this price range, they still stick with the standard 60 hertz, so this is a nice upgrade.
I see. So it's not just about the size, it's about how that size enhances the way you interact with the phone.
Exactly.
That's a good point. And speaking of aesthetics, they've got 3 different color options: jazzy green, groovy violet, and ash black. Honestly, they all sound kind of cool. But if you had to pick one, which one are you going for?
Oh, tough choice. I think I'm drawn to the jazzy green. It sounds vibrant and unique, although that groovy violet does have a certain appeal as well.
Yeah, they all have their own vibe, for sure. Now, let's get into the core of this phone, the performance. The review highlights the MediaTek Dimensity 6100 Plus chipset. Now, I know that MediaTek has been stepping up their game lately, but how does this chipset stack up against the competition? Say something from Qualcomm in a similar price range.
That's a great question. And you're right, MediaTek has been making waves. The Dimensity 6100 Plus is no slouch. It's designed for efficiency and smooth multitasking. But, when you compare it to, say, like a Snapdragon 695, it might fall a bit short in raw power. However, it excels in power efficiency, which is crucial for battery life. So, it's all about trade-off.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe not the best for hardcore gamers or something.
Right.
But for the average user who values, battery life, this could be a winner.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of storage, we've got options for 4 gigabytes or 6 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of internal storage. Plus, there's a micro SDXC support for up to 1 TB of expandable storage.
Wow.
That's a lot of space.
That is a lot. I mean, is it really necessary? Most users probably won't even come close to filling 128 gigabytes, let alone a terabyte.
Yeah.
It seems a bit excessive, especially considering cloud storage options these days.
I know, it's is that a marketing tactic or is it actually practical?
Right.
Maybe they're trying to appeal to a specific user who really needs that much storage?
Possibly. Something to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, next up, let's talk about the camera. The review dives into this triple rear camera setup. We've got a 50 MP wide primary sensor, a 5 MT ultra-wide lens, and a 2 MP macro lens. On paper, that sounds pretty standard for a mid-range phone. Was there anything that stood out to you about this camera setup?
Well, the 50 MP sensor, should be capable of capturing some decent shots, especially in good lighting. But honestly, I'm a little skeptical about the 2 MP macro lens. Those tend to be more of a gimmick than anything else. They often result in grainy, low-resolution images. I'd rather see them ditch the macro lens and invest in, a better ultra-wide or a telephoto lens instead.
Yeah, I see your point. It's they're trying to check off all the boxes, but not necessarily prioritizing quality over quantity.
Exactly. It's a trend we see in a lot of mid-range phones these days.
Yeah, true that. The review also mentions 1080p video recording at 30 FPS. Again, pretty standard, but it should get the job done for, casual video recording. And of course, we can't forget about selfies. There's a 13 MP front camera for all those social media moments.
Yeah, nothing groundbreaking there. But it's in line with what we'd expect from a phone in this category. I think the key is going to be how well the software processes those images and videos.
Good point. Software can make a huge difference. Okay, let's move on to a feature that I think is always a hot topic: battery life. And this phone does not disappoint. It packs a massive 6,000 millipike battery.
Now, that's impressive. That's larger than most flagship phones out there. And combined with the power-efficient chipset we've discussed earlier, you're looking at potentially 2 days of battery life with moderate use. No more battery anxiety.
Oh my gosh, talk about freedom. I can already imagine going on weekend trips and not even having to pack a charger. Of course, when you do eventually need to recharge, there's 25W fast charging via USB Type-C.
Right. That's pretty standard for fast charging these days. Not the fastest on the market, but it should provide a decent top-up speed.
Okay. I am curious, though, with a battery this big, how long does a full charge actually take?
That is a good question. We'd have to look into like the specific charging times, but it's safe to say it'll be longer than charging a smaller battery. But I think the trade-off of extended battery life is worth it for most users.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that for sure. Okay, let's delve into the software side of things now. The Galaxy F15 5G runs on Android 14 with One UI 6.0. Now, I'm a fan of Samsung's One UI, but this version claims to have some like significant improvements. Can you shed some light on what's new and exciting in One UI 6.0?
Sure. So One UI has always been known for your customization options and its user-friendly interface. But in version 6.0, they've really focused on refining the design and improving performance. One notable feature is the enhanced quick settings panel. It gives you more control and flexibility. They've also introduced new widgets and a redesigned lock screen with more personalization options. So overall, it seems like they've, taken user feedback to heart and made some meaningful updates.
Oh, I love that. I always appreciate when companies actually listen to their users and make adjustments based on real-world feedback. Now, on the security front, the phone offers a side-mounted fingerprint sensor and face recognition. Pretty standard fare these days, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. But it's worth noting that not all fingerprint sensors are created equal. So we'd need to see how accurate and responsive this particular sensor is. And as for face recognition, it's convenient. But it's not always the most secure method. So ultimately, it comes down to personal preference and how much security you prioritize.
Yeah, true. It's all about finding that balance between convenience and security. And of course, we can't forget about the star of the show, 5G connectivity. This phone is built for speed.
Absolutely. And with 5G becoming more and more widespread, it's great to see it being implemented in mid-range phones like this. It opens up a world of possibilities for faster downloads, seamless streaming, and improved online gaming experiences.
It feels like we're finally entering the era of 5G. It's exciting to see how it's changing the way we use our phones. The review also mentions some additional features, Bluetooth 5.3 dual SIM functionality, and a hybrid SIM slot. Now, while these might not be like the headlining features, they can be quite useful for certain users. What are your thoughts on these extras?
Well, Bluetooth 5.3 is definitely a welcome addition. It offers improved range and stability and low power consumption compared to older versions. Dual SIM functionality is always handy for travelers or people who want to keep their work and personal numbers separate. And the hybrid SIM slot gives you the flexibility to choose between a second SIM card or expanded storage. These are all solid features that add to the phone's overall versatility.
I agree. They might not be flashy, but they are practical additions that enhance the user experience. All right, I think we've covered a lot of ground here in part one. We've delved into the design, the performance, the camera, battery life, software security, and even some bonus features. So far, this Galaxy F15 5G seems like a pretty well-rounded mid-range contender.
It does. It seems like Samsung has packed a lot into this phone. But the real question is, does it all come together to create a truly compelling user experience? That's what we'll explore in part two. Okay, so picking up where we left off, it's time to consider. Does the Galaxy F15 5G actually deliver on its promises?
Right, we've dissected all the specs and features, but now let's see if it all adds up to a worthwhile experience.
Exactly.
What's the overall verdict from the RechargeMyTopup review? Did they actually enjoy using this phone?
They did. They actually called it a pleasant surprise in the mid-range market. They praised its long battery life, the vibrant display, and surprisingly smooth performance for everyday tasks. However, they did mention that heavy gamers might want to look elsewhere for something with a bit more graphical horsepower.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like it's aimed more at the average user who prioritizes, practicality over pushing the limits of mobile gaming.
Exactly. It's about understanding, your needs and your priorities. Like if you're someone who's constantly draining their battery with social media streaming multitasking, this phone seems like a dream come true. But if you're all about the latest graphics-intensive games, it might not be the best fit.
It's all about finding the right tool for the job. There's no point in having a supercar if you're only driving to the grocery store.
Exactly.
Uh,
The review also highlights the display as a major plus, especially for consuming media. The combination of the large AMOLED screen, the FHD Plus resolution, and that 90 Hz refresh rate create a really immersive experience.
Oh, I can imagine. Everything looks and feels so much more fluid with that higher refresh rate. It's one of those things that you don't really realize you're missing until you experience it.
Absolutely. And it's something that's becoming more and more common in mid-range phones these days, which is great news for consumers.
Yeah, definitely a sign of progress in the smartphone world. Now, we talked about the camera earlier, and, while the specs are decent, the reviews seemed a bit lukewarm about its performance. Did they have any further insights on that?
Yeah. So they said the image quality was good in well-lit conditions, but it struggled a bit in low light. The 50MP main sensor, it does its job. But don't expect flagship-level photography here. As we discussed earlier, that 2MP macro lens is more of a marketing bullet point than a practical tool.
So good enough for, everyday snapshots and social media sharing, but maybe not for aspiring photographers?
Right. If photography is your passion, you'll likely want to invest in a phone with a more advanced camera system.
Makes sense. For capturing those spontaneous moments and sharing them with friends and family, this camera seems perfectly capable.
Agreed. It's all about having realistic expectations.
Now, let's talk about the feature that really impressed us earlier, that massive 6,000 milliamp battery. The review raves about its longevity, but I'm curious about the real-world impact. Did they give any, specific examples of how long the battery actually lasts?
They did. They mentioned that with moderate use, browsing, streaming, and some social media, they were able to get through a full day and still have about 40% battery left. Wow. They even pushed it further with a day of heavy use, including several hours of video streaming and gaming, and still they'll manage to squeeze out a full day on a single charge.
That's incredible. It really lives up to the hype of being like a battery life champion. I'm starting to think this phone is designed for people who are always on the go.
It certainly seems that way. No more frantically searching for an outlet in the middle of the day. This phone can keep up with your busy lifestyle.
And when you do eventually need to recharge, that 25W fast charging should get you back up and running fairly quickly.
Right. It's not the fastest charging technology out there, but it's perfectly adequate for a phone in this category.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about the software experience. The Galaxy F15 5G runs on Android 14 with Samsung's One UI 6.0. We touched on some of the new features earlier, but what stood out to you about the overall user experience?
Well, the review praised One UI 6.0 for its smooth performance and intuitive interface. They specifically mentioned the improved customization options, which allow you to, really personalize your phone to your liking. They also highlighted the enhanced quick settings panel and the redesigned lock screen.
Oh, I love those little touches that make a phone feel more personal, like they've thought about all the small details. That can make a big difference in the overall experience.
Exactly. And they've also made some efforts to improve performance with this version of One UI. Apps launch quickly, animations are smooth, and there's no noticeable lag even when you're multitasking.
That's great. There's nothing more frustrating than a sluggish phone. It seems like Samsung has really done their homework with One UI 6.0.
They have. It's a mature and polished software experience that complements the hardware nicely.
Okay, so let's wrap up this part of our deep dive with a focus on the phone's value proposition. We've covered a lot of ground, but does the Galaxy S15 5G truly offer good value for the price?
Based on the RechargeMyTopup review and our discussion so far, I would say it does. It might not be the most powerful or feature-packed phone on the market, but it excels in the areas that matter most to a lot of users: battery life, display quality, and everyday performance. It's a well-rounded package that offers a solid user experience without breaking the bank.
It seems like Samsung has found a sweet spot in the mid-range market with this phone. It's not trying to be everything to everyone, but it does a great job of catering to a specific audience, those who prioritize, practicality, reliability, and a long-lasting battery.
I agree. It's a phone that understands its strengths and plays to them effectively.
So if you're someone who values those qualities in a smartphone, the Galaxy F15 5G seems like a very compelling option. But before we jump to conclusions, let's explore some potential downsides and see if there are any hidden drawbacks that we haven't considered yet.
Good point. There's always more to uncover. Let's dive into that in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so let's get into it. What potential downsides did you RechargeMyTopup review uncover?
Well, one thing they pointed out was that while the phone boasts, 5G connectivity, its actual 5G performance might vary depending on your location and network provider.
Okay.
They emphasize that not all 5G networks are created equal.
Right. That's a good reminder. 5G is still evolving. And, coverage and speeds can be inconsistent depending on where you are. So while the phone is 5G capable, the actual experience might not always live up to the hype.
Exactly. Another point they raised was the phone's weight. That massive 6,000 mAh battery comes at a cost. Literally. The phone is a bit on the heavier side compared to some of its slimmer counterparts.
I see. I can see how that could be an issue for some users, especially those who are used to lightweight phones. It's a trade-off you have to consider. Longer battery life often means a bulkier device.
Exactly. And while the review didn't mention any major software issues, they did note that Samsung's One UI, while generally well received, can sometimes feel a bit bloated, with pre-installed apps and features that some users might find unnecessary.
Yeah, I get that. That's a common complaint with a lot of Android phones. It's that balance between offering a feature-rich experience and not overwhelming the user with too much stuff.
Right. It's a matter of personal preference. Some users appreciate having a wide range of options, while others prefer a cleaner, more minimalist approach.
Right. It's all about finding the right fit for your individual needs and style. So considering these potential drawbacks, do you think the Galaxy F15 5G is still a strong contender in the mid-range market?
I think so. While it's not perfect, it offers a compelling combination of features and performance at an attractive price point. The standout features like the long battery life and vibrant display really outweigh the minor drawbacks for a lot of users. It's all about priorities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No phone is perfect. It's always about finding the one that best aligns with your needs and preferences. It seems like the Galaxy F15 5G has carved out a nice niche for itself in the mid-range market.
It has, and as technology continues to evolve, it'll be interesting to see how Samsung continues to innovate in this space. Competition is fierce out there, and that's ultimately good news for consumers.
I agree, it drives progress and gives us more choices. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the Samsung Galaxy F15 5G from top to bottom. We dissected the specs, analyzed its performance, and considered both its strengths and weaknesses.
We've taken a pretty comprehensive look at what this phone has to offer, and hopefully we've armed you, the listener, with the information you need to make an informed decision.
Exactly. At the end of the day, the best phone for you is the one that fits your lifestyle, your budget, and your priorities. But if you're in the market for a mid-range phone with a focus on battery life, display quality, and a smooth user experience, the Galaxy F15 5G is definitely worth considering.
I agree. And if you're hungry for more in-depth tech insights and reviews, be sure to check out RechargeMyTopup.com. They've got all the latest scoop on smartphones, gadgets, and everything in between.
Awesome. They're a fantastic resource. And who knows, maybe we'll be back soon with another deep dive, exploring a whole new corner of the tech universe. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Samsung Galaxy F15 5G TTEE.